the mysterious stalker. I lived in a small, peaceful town where everyone knew each other. It was one of those places where you could walk down the street, and no matter which way you turned, you'd be greeted by a familiar face. My name is Emily, and I had always felt safe here, until one day everything I knew about safety was shattered. It all started with strange, silent phone calls. At first, I brushed them off as mistakes, maybe wrong numbers or some prankster kids messing around. Every time I answered, the line would be dead silent, only static in my ear. I didn't think much of it, not until it started happening every day. Each call felt more unnerving, like someone was waiting for me to pick up, and then they'd hang up before I could say anything. The first time I heard a voice, it wasn't a mistake. It was low and raspy, like a man who had been whispering in the shadows for far too long. "Emily," he said, his voice sending an icy chill through me. "I know everything about you." At first I was confused. How could he know my name? How could he know anything about me? I told myself it was just a coincidence, maybe a random person with a creepy voice. But then, the details started to hit too close to home. "Emily, I saw you wear that red sweater today. You always get coffee at the corner cafe, don't you? That book you were reading last night, I know it. You always read before bed." How did he know these things? No one had seen me at the cafe, and I certainly hadn't mentioned the book to anyone. Panic began to rise in me, but I kept convincing myself it was just a prank. A weird prank, an unsettling one, but a prank nonetheless. That was until it escalated. The calls became more frequent, and the voice became more menacing. "I see you," he would whisper. "I see where you go, who you talk to. I'm always watching." His words were drenched in a sickening promise, one I could feel like a weight on my chest. One evening, the voice grew even darker, his tone now almost threatening. "If you don't leave, Emily, I will make sure you never feel safe again. You and your family won't survive this." I froze. My family? Was he threatening them now too? I tried to tell my parents, but they were skeptical. They thought it was some kid with too much time on his hands, playing a sick game. They thought I was overreacting, but it didn't feel like a game anymore. It felt real. I wanted to tell the police, but what could I say? Someone's calling me and saying creepy things. They'd never take me seriously. But when the calls continued, and something even stranger happened, my parents agreed to report it. That's when the weirdest thing of all happened. The police came to our house, trying to trace the calls. They found something that left them scratching their heads. The calls were coming from my own phone. But how? My phone was often turned off or in airplane mode, or even lying untouched on the table. They were baffled. How could anyone be using my phone when it wasn't even turned on? They suggested we change our phone numbers, move to a different house, maybe take some time away from the area. We did, but no matter what we did, the stalker always found us. New numbers, he had them. A new address, he knew that too. Desperation set in. I didn't feel safe in my own home anymore, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I set up a trap, working with a few tech-savvy friends who helped me install surveillance cameras all around the house. We hid them in fake rocks outside and inside, under the floorboards, on top of cabinets, and even in the plants by the window. We did everything we could to make sure no one could notice them. As night fell, I sat in the dark, my nerves shot, waiting for something to happen. I had no idea if I'd be able to confront this stalker, but I was determined to end this nightmare once and for all. Hours passed, the tension thick in the air, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves outside, the distant chirp of crickets. Then I heard it, the faintest sound, footsteps soft but deliberate tapping against the floorboards. It was almost past midnight, the hour when everything should have been still and quiet. My heart raced. The footsteps were getting closer, moving through the hallway toward my room. They were so close now I could hear every single step. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, ready to dial 911, but as I touched the screen, it lit up on its own. My heart stopped when I saw the message. "Don't bother, Emily, I'm already inside." I froze. It wasn't possible. He wasn't outside. He was in the house. The footsteps I'd been hearing? They were right behind me. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. My phone was the only light, casting a pale glow that barely lit the space around me. I couldn't see a thing. My pulse hammered in my ears. I pressed my back against the wall, praying for some miracle. The only sound was my breath, ragged and shallow in the oppressive silence. Then came a laugh. It was quiet, but it echoed throughout the room, like it was coming from every corner. "Oh, Emily," the voice whispered in my ear, as though he was right beside me. "Did you really think you could outsmart me?" I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry, my mouth too parched to make a sound. My eyes darted around the room, my body stiff with fear, hoping to catch a glimpse of the intruder. But there was nothing, just shadows. "Your clever little trap," he continued, his voice growing louder. "Did you think I wouldn't notice those cameras? You really thought I wouldn't see them?" How? How could he know? We had been so careful, so meticulous in setting everything up. The cameras were hidden so well that no one could have noticed them. I was so terrified, my hands shook as I clutched the phone. It buzzed again, and I couldn't help but check the screen. The blood drained from my face. It was a live feed from one of our hidden cameras, showing my empty room. But there, standing in the middle of the frame, was a shadowy figure, tall, formless, and looming. It wasn't a person. It wasn't anything that could be explained. It just stood there, a black silhouette against the faint glow. I swiped to the next camera feed, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. The same thing. The shadow appeared in every room, moving seamlessly from one feed to the next, always facing the camera. It was as if he knew exactly where we had placed them. "You see, Emily?" The voice purred in my ear. "I'm everywhere and nowhere. I'm in the walls. I'm in the air you breathe. I'm in the very fabric of reality around you." My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to turn off the phone, to run, to hide, but I couldn't look away. The shadow in the feed slowly turned its head, as though it knew exactly where I was sitting. Its face was featureless, but somehow I could feel its gaze piercing through me. Suddenly, the phone went black. The room was pitch black again. The voice echoed through the darkness. "Now, Emily, it's time we had a proper introduction." I felt a cold, icy presence behind me, a chill that ran through my bones. My heart thudded in my chest as I slowly turned around. And there it was, two glowing pinpricks of light. Eyes, but not human eyes. They hovered in the darkness, suspended at head height. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. "Who? What are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible, almost lost in the darkness. The only response was a low chuckle, sending a wave of terror through me. The room closed in. I knew in that moment I was no longer alone. The stalker had come to claim me.